So tonight's topic. I'm sorry, let me introduce myself. So my name is Edward Williams. I am the founder and creator of Health by Anything Necessary. If you want to find out any information about me, go ahead and head over to my social media on Facebook as well as Instagram, Health BAMN. That's at Health BAMN, BAMN. So before we get started, the topic of this conversation is going to be, the discussion is going to be better medications or better education. Better medications versus better education. Which one do we truly need? And I'll kind of make it, I'll specify it a little bit as far as what we're talking about. I'm not talking about all conditions. I'll talk about exactly what conditions we're speaking about. Now, before I begin this conversation, I would like to quote two of my heroes. The first one is going to be the Honorable Messiah Marcus Garvey. And his quote is very short and straight to the point. And this quote goes like this: "The whole world is run on bluff." The whole world is run on bluff. And then next, my hero, Malcolm X, is also my first medical teacher as well, too. And he says, I quote, "Never let your enemy form your opinion. The first step the enemy takes in a revolution is to take over the media and tell the people that the war is over so that they all surrender." End quote. So I'll start off by saying what I have to say may sound very foreign and strange. And we need to understand that the only reason that what I'm saying sounds foreign and strange is because we have been thoroughly convinced that we are innately defective, that diseases just run in our family, these things just run in our veins, and that we are ultimately destined to be sick. And so when someone is presenting something that's completely opposite of it, it's going to take a while to actually understand what someone is saying if you've been so conditioned to believe that it runs in your family, it runs in your family, it runs in your family. You're destined to be sick, you're destined to be sick, you're destined to be sick. This is going to take some time. And so I need for you all to bear with me and also understand that this system of disease management is a burning building. The system of disease management is a burning building. And I have no interest whatsoever in teaching you on how to stay cool inside of a burning building. My mission is threefold. The first mission is to actually sound the alarm and let you know the building is on fire. The next one is to actually show you how to effectively and safely get out of the building. And then third is to actually show you how to create your or our own building. And this is part of that process. This is part of the process. This process right now will be sounding the alarm, and also letting you know, this building's on fire. Now, this discussion about better medication versus better education, it came to me for several reasons. I'm constantly getting messages from other practitioners, but mainly from other people who provide information, and then my own patients. And, the idea of, is this a good medication? It causes me to have to always pause before I respond, because I have to be very careful with my answer as well as truthful with my answer as well. And so when we're talking about these conditions, diseases, I want you all to know that we're specifically talking about what they call preventable conditions. I'm specifically talking about what they call chronic conditions, lifestyle conditions. And this would be the high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, heart disease, PCOS, hypogonadism. There's aspects of that, like with hypogonadism, there's aspects of that is not preventable, which is the primary part. But we're largely focusing on these things that they call lifestyle conditions. And the reason why they're called lifestyle conditions is because they only come to be about because of our lifestyle. The reason why they're called preventable conditions is because they can actually be prevented. And so we have to be very careful about what it is we're asking for when we get into this conversation about better medications. We have to be very careful about what we're asking for, because you may be asking to get hustled. And once again, I know I'm saying a lot of stuff that seems pretty serious, but I'll clear it all up and I'll make it make all sense. It's still going to have a punch to it. And so this is the hustle. And this is why I said we have to be very careful about what we're talking about or what we're asking for when it comes to this conversation of better medications versus better education. And once again, I'm talking about the preventable conditions such as high blood pressure, prediabetes, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity. Now, I don't consider any of these things to be actual diseases, and I'll explain that in depth a little bit more too. Now, when we're going, if we're going to actually have this conversation, we need to start on a very stable foundation. Because if I just go into the conversation talking about how hydrochlorothiazide works better in African Americans versus the actual beta blockers, and how beta blockers work better than actual ACE inhibitors, or if I start talking about metformin versus glypiride or glimepiride, or talking about statins versus other medications, what I'm doing is actually having a conversation in a constructed framework that has already been created for me, and I'm using data points that has been given to me. And so we're not going to go in that. We're not even going to go into that realm. What we're going to do is we're going to step outside of this constructed framework and actually ask some very basic questions. And this is why I always tell you, the quality of your question determines the quality of your health. So let's step outside of this box. I know it's going to be a little painful for some of us because we've been so thoroughly convinced that their ice is colder. But for a minute, let's just step outside of that box. Now, once again, you have all those conditions: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, diabetes, prediabetes, all those things, right? And the reason that we want to actually manage them or decrease them or eradicate them is because they lead to worse things, right? Such as heart attacks, strokes, kidney disease, which will lead to dialysis, also amputations. And so these are all bad things, right? I'm not going to take anything with me. Those are all bad things. We definitely want to stay away from it. But we believe that actually treating these preventable conditions or these lifestyle diseases, we believe that by treating them and managing them with medications is going to prevent those things from happening, right? That's what we believe. That's what we're told. So you don't believe it on your own just by random. You believe it because that's what you've been conditioned to believe, right? So what if I tell you that whole premises is a farce? It doesn't exist. It's not real. You don't have to believe me yet. Let's just go ahead and look at some receipts. So when we're dealing with this conversation and we're stepping outside of that actual construct that's been created for us to actually deal with, we're going to step outside of that. There's 5 things that I need for us to ask. 5 things that I need for us to ask before we can answer the question, do we need better medications or better education? There's 5 questions that we need to ask. The first question is it preventable? That's a question that needs to be asked, right? I'll read the rest and I'll come back and we actually address it more. First question is it preventable? Yes or no? Next question, is it reversible? Yes or no? Next question, do medications actually decrease mortality and morbidity? Yes or no? Does the effects outweigh the benefits? Yes or no? And are there alternative therapies? Yes or no? So before we can even answer the question of do we need better medications or better education, before I jump into this framework and start talking to you about how ACE inhibitors work and how beta blockers work and how hydrochlorothiazide, before I do any of those things, let's step outside of that realm. Let's step outside of that realm and let's start to really have some independent thoughts for ourselves. 5 questions we got to ask before we can address better medications versus better education. 5 questions we need to ask. Is it preventable? Is it reversible? Do the medications actually decrease mortality and morbidity? Do the side effects outweigh the benefit? Do the benefits outweigh the side effects? And are there effective alternatives? Let's deal with the first one. High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, PCOS, high cholesterol, obesity. Is it preventable? Yes or no? Yo, in the chat, YouTube and Facebook, yes or no? Are these conditions preventable? Are these conditions preventable? Let me know. Yes or no? Yes or no? So while y'all getting your thoughts together, this is a question that's really based in education, right? Because the people should know for a fact whether it is preventable or whether it's not preventable. You know, if you're going to cry about the whole the cost of healthcare and the cost of medications and insurance and all these things, then we definitely want to let people know that these things are actually preventable. And if they are preventable, then that's where the education comes into play as far as educating people that it is preventable. I'm going to tell you straight up right now, most people that I know don't know that these conditions are actually preventable. Most of my patients, when they first come in for the first time, it's a shock to find out that just because your mom has high blood pressure and your dad has high blood pressure, it doesn't mean that you're going to have high blood pressure. It's a shock to the system. It's a shock to the system when they find out that just because your brother and sisters have diabetes and your blood sugar is now increasing, you can't use the fact that your brother and sister have it, it runs in your family, you know, you're going to get it. You can't use that as the reason for why your blood sugar is increasing anymore. And so when I tell them that these things are actually preventable, meaning that they don't have to happen, meaning that we can actually take action to stop it, it's a shock to a lot of people's system. And so I'm looking right now in on Facebook, and I'm also looking in YouTube right now as well. And the question was, are these conditions preventable? And for the most part, when it comes to our community, most people don't believe it's preventable. And that's obvious because what do we always say that we have to stop saying? What do we always say? Yeah, it runs in my family. Yeah, my mom got high blood pressure. My dad got it too. It runs in my family. Mama got it, daddy got it. It runs in my family. It runs in my family. It runs in my family. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? It means that we subconsciously, whether we know it or not, believe that we are innately defective. Who gave you that narrative? Who told you that? Who told you that? Not only who told you that, but where is the actual proof? Now, it looks like you have plenty of proof, right? Because when you look around your household, you look around your neighborhood, you look around, especially at family reunions, it follows suit, right? Everybody's taking medication. Everybody has something. Something is going on with somebody, everyone at the family reunion on some level when it comes to health conditions. So it makes sense to you that this is something that runs in your family. But once again, what else is the common denominator? Because if I ask you on Facebook and I ask you on Instagram, if you have a family member that came to you and say, yo, you know, I gained a little weight, my blood pressure is high, my blood sugar is high, and I don't want to take any medications, what should I do? What is your advice to them? What is your advice to your family member that came to you and told you that blood pressure is high, blood sugar is high, they gained a little weight, don't want to take any medications, but I want to live? What's your advice to them? What do you tell them? What do you tell them? Change eating habits. Yeah, change eating habits. Move. Eat better. Change eating. Yeah, exactly. So right off of the back, and I haven't had anybody that told me anything different, no matter where they were at on their health journey. I haven't had anybody that told me anything different. And this means that innately you understand, or you automatically already assume that they're not eating healthy. If you're going to tell them to eat better, that means that you don't believe that they're eating better in the first place. And so you're going to tell them to eat better. You're going to tell them to exercise. And if you tell them to exercise, that means you won't believe that they're actually exercising now. And so innately, we know that we got to do better as far as the foods and movement. We know that. And it's just that we have this cognitive dissonance where we have gone all in as a community, unfortunately, in believing that their ice is colder, that their information is the best, and that, you know, that their recommendations is everything. And so we truly have to let that go. We truly have to start questioning everything and thinking for ourselves. Now, let's get back to it. And so if it does run in your family, where's the gene? What gene is it? What's the high blood pressure gene? What's the type 2 diabetic gene? What is it? Come on, we got to have it. We got drones that can deliver a package in one day. We got spaceships that can go to the moon. What gene is it? We can definitely figure that out, right? There's no gene. It's a trick question. There's no gene. What's running in your family is the actual lifestyle. What's running in your family is the actual habits. The way your parents eat, if they have high blood pressure and they came to be about because of the way they eat, the way they drink, the way they smoke, the way they the lack of movement, and if they taught you how to eat, live, deal with stress, and you go about your life and you do the same thing, then yeah, you're going to get the same thing as well too. However, when you have that child that says that grows up and learns better and says, all right, you know what? I shouldn't probably eat this because every time I eat it, my heart starts palpitating. Like, I probably shouldn't eat this. Every time I eat this, I go straight to the bathroom. I probably shouldn't eat this. You know what? When I move, I feel better. When I move, my blood pressure goes down. Therefore, I'm going to make this a lifestyle. And so what happens? That person starts to actually live that lifestyle. Now, it's hard. It's harder than, it's easier said than done. But is it possible? Yes. And so when we're talking about these conditions, when we're talking about blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, all those things, the question is it preventable? And the answer is 1,000% yes. These are all preventable. And so when we're talking about better medication versus better education, well, we already strike out the better medication on that part for that question, because the fact that most people don't understand that these things are preventable means that more education needs to take place. Therefore, as a healthcare practitioner, whether it be your nurse practitioner, your PA, your doctor, we should be equipped with we should be equipped with a lot of information as pertains to actually educating the patient, empowering them that these things are preventable, that we shouldn't even allow a patient to just say out their mouth, yeah, it runs in my family, it runs, like, no. And the fact that we would allow that to continuously happen is a part of this learned helplessness that's being passed around rapidly in this healthcare system. Learned helplessness is being passed around. Oh, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Yeah, your mom had high blood pressure and your dad had diabetes and you're black. I mean, hey, it's not your fault. That's learned helplessness. It's not your fault. Here, take these medications. Go and get them filled out. Come back and see me in 3 months. It's not your fault. No, we have a whole lot to say because these things are actually preventable. So let's move on to the next one. Is it reversible? Is it reversible? That's the question we got to ask. Is it reversible? Once again, we're talking about high blood pressure, diabetes, prediabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, PCOS, hypogonadism. We need to know, are these things actually reversible? Because we already know that it's preventable. We know it's preventable. What are the chances that it's actually reversible? Like, what's the chances that I can actually get this thing to stop progressing and actually turn around and go the other way? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So what I'm going to do, you all can't see this because I'm not that savvy with YouTube Live and my actual screen yet, but I'll get there. So let's first deal with high blood pressure, all right? Let's deal with high blood pressure real quick. So, is it reversible? That's the question we want to know. Well, y'all tell me in the chat, those things that I just listed off, is it possible to reverse it? Is it possible to reverse it? Let me know. Yes or no? Can you reverse it? Yes or no? Let me know. Let me know. Can we reverse it? Yes. All right. We got George saying yes. Is it reversible? Let me know. All right. CBD improve health. Yes. It is possible to reverse everything. Yes. Yes, it's reversible. The fasting and weight. Oh, who's CC? Who's CC? All right. Yes, we got some yeses. All right. Somebody said, does it depend on what stage? You would have to kind of clarify what you mean by this stage. Somebody else says yes. Nature gives you everything you need. Okay. So let's look at some. So it's not that hard to really sell people on the fact that high blood pressure is reversible. We understand that and if you don't understand, I actually have a free course on it to actually further elaborate as far as what's going on with it. But the big one that is a no-no as far as saying it's reversible is type 2 diabetes, because type 2 diabetes is something that's increasing rapidly. And when it comes to type 2 diabetes and kidney disease, it's the number one reason, it's the number one leading factor as far as someone having kidney disease to the point where they actually need dialysis. So I'm going to choose my word choose my words very carefully because I don't want to cause quite a stir. But type 2 diabetes, you almost get jacked up if you go around saying that it's reversible. But I want to tell you that it is reversible. So what I'm going to do right now is just some light work. I'm going to show you some free resources that y'all can go and actually check out as far as type 2 diabetes being reversible. Everything else is reversible. I mean, if you need me to further explain that, I have a course called The Truth About High Blood Pressure, and I lay out the receipts as far as why it's reversible. So what you need to do, or what you can do, is go to Google and type in PubMed. PubMed is an open source medical research institute website, and type in reversal of type 2 diabetes. Go to PubMed, type in reversal of type 2 diabetes. The title is Reversal of Type 2 Diabetes, Normalization of Beta Cell Function is Associated with Decreased Pancreas and Liver Triglycerides. Now, this is a study. This study was done back in 2011, y'all. The study was done back in 2011, so it's not brand new news. Matter of fact, I have older books that actually talk about the reversal of type 2 diabetes. You know, the ancestors talked about the reversal of type 2 diabetes if it was to occur. And so, essentially, when we're talking about the actual conclusions and the results of this this actual study, it's showing the actual normalization of both the beta cell function, which most doctors would tell you that it's actually possible to burn those cells out. And if you actually need more information as far as type 2 diabetes and the truth about it, let me know. I can do a lecture on it as well too when I come on Saturday or Sunday. Or you can go to my website and actually watch the free course. It's a free course called The Truth About Diabetes. Both those courses, blood pressure and diabetes, is what I would consider to be an intellectual body slam. So let's continue. So when we talk about the actual normalization of both the beta cell function and also hepatic insulin sensitivity, the reversal was achieved by dietary energy restriction alone. So what is dietary energy restriction? What is that? That's jibber jabber for fasting. That's jibber jabber for fasting. And so essentially that's just one. But that study will actually show you when you go into depth and you have to actually pay for the whole one. But that one will show you that diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is reversible, and that study shows you it with actual fasting. Next, if you go to, once again, Google, and you type in New England Journal of Medicine, they did a study, and it's called Bariatric Surgery versus Intensive Medical Therapy for Diabetes. And so what they want to see is, how come? So it's a known fact that if you have somebody who is diabetic, and they've been diabetic for almost 20 years, and they're over 400 pounds, right? Like, it's a known fact. It's called the Stampede Study. And so if you have somebody who's over 400 pounds, they've been diabetic for 15, 20 years, they were on insulin, they've been told that their pancreatic beta cells have burnt out. This study talks about how after this patient had the actual procedure done, how within 3 months, his pancreas went back to normal functioning, meaning that the same pancreas that he was told was actually burnt out went right back to where it was at. In addition to that, his cells became more sensitive. Now, is this a talk about having a bariatric surgery? Am I trying to sell you on that? Hell no, I'm not trying to sell you on that at all. But when we go into actually understanding why this happened, if you know anybody who's had bariatric surgery, you know that they're on a strict diet. Matter of fact, the diet is 10 times stricter than it would be if they just went ahead and changed up their lifestyle. But nonetheless, they are essentially having a forced fast. Bariatric surgery is essentially a forced fast, a very expensive forced fast. And so due to the decrease in eating and the decrease of glucose spikes followed by insulin spikes, diabetes reverses. And this was in 3 months, right? And so y'all can go ahead and look this up, bariatric study versus intensive medical therapy. This was published in 2012 by the New England Journal of Medicine. And so the crazy thing about it is that this person had only lost 50 pounds. They went from 400 to 350 within 3 months. That's a lot of weight, right? That's a lot of weight. But it's not like they need to get all the way down to like 200. before the diabetes actually started to reverse, before the actual pancreatic cells that you were told was burnt out actually started functioning again. And so I say all that to say this: type 2 diabetes is reversible. We've seen it. We've seen it plenty of times. The Accord study, the Advanced study, the VDAT study, the STAMP study, all these studies that we don't know about, that's kept on the low, but have shown time after time after time after time that these things are actually reversible. All right, so let's keep going. Let me check on y'all real quick. Oh my goodness, the chat is going crazy. And also take a moment right now and hit the like button, the share button, and the subscribe button. All right, hit those. Let's get with it. All right, let's keep on going. So those were the first two questions that I told you we need to address as it pertains to this conversation about, do we need better medications or do we need better education? Because unfortunately, my colleagues, they have a big problem with the way that I'm speaking about these conditions. And they feel that I'm moving us away from getting better medications, or I'm moving us away from actually having better health care, or causing a disparity as pertains to these preventable conditions. And I always forget that they think these medications work. I always forget. And so when I'm speaking, I sound crazy because I'm always dismissing a lot of these medications, and I have to come to the conclusion like, oh, they think the medications work. So that's why we're not on the same page. And so this right here, we're going through it. The next point, the first 2 points were, is it preventable? The next one was, is it reversible? And now the next one after that is, do these medications actually decrease mortality and morbidity? Now, mortality and morbidity, we're talking about, do they decrease sickness? Do they decrease actual heart attacks that you actually survive? Do they decrease the strokes where you actually still survive? Kidney disease, but you still survive? Dialysis, you're still living? And do they decrease the actual mortality, which is the actual death? So you got morbidity and mortality. You're taking these medications for the high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, high cholesterol. You're taking these medications because you want to decrease mortality and morbidity. You don't want the stroke, the heart attack, the kidney disease, the amputations, right? And that makes sense. The question that we now need to ask, and they don't look at me like I'm crazy when I say, but do they work though? Like, yeah, they work. Of course they work. Look at the blood pressure cuff. Look at the blood work. Look at the finger stick. Yeah, it works. No. I see it looks good on the actual scale. I see it looks good on the blood pressure cuff. Your blood pressure is 117 over 73. High five. Good job. Even though you feel lightheaded, even though you can't stand up fast, even though you feel dizzy, even though you're going to the bathroom urinate over and over, even though it's causing erectile function, high five. Blood pressure is great. Cholesterol looks great, even though you have muscle aches, even though it's depleting CoQ10, even though it's causing you problems in the bedroom as well, even though it's increasing your insulin resistance. Cholesterol, down. Good job. Blood sugar, A1C, it's down, right? Even though it's causing B12 deficiency, even though it's increasing your homocysteine, even though it's decreasing your folic acid, even though it's actually increasing or decreasing your 2 vital minerals such as potassium and magnesium. All those things, whatever, high five, good job, it's down. And so my question is, I understand that from a metric level, the numbers look great. I don't argue with that. I know these medications body those receptors. They go in, they block the beta receptor like no food could. I understand that they go in, they kick in the doors, they shoot everything that moves. I'm not arguing about that. What I want to know is, does it actually improve your health? Because if people thought about it, they would want to know, if I take this medication, am I actually going to get healthier? If I take this medication, will it prevent me from having these things that I want to stay away from actually happening? Because surely it won't actually increase it, right? Like, you're not going to give me a medication that's actually going to increase those things. So will it actually decrease it? Well, now what I want y'all to do on YouTube and Facebook, do me a favor. Type in NNT. And go to Google. Oh, whoa, wait. Only if you have YouTube Red, because I don't need y'all. I need y'all to stay here for this work. Let me finish working. Now, if you have YouTube Red, that means that you can go off and the video is still going to play. You're still going to hear me. But if not, just take notes. Okay, just take notes. And later on, I'm going to figure out how to do this thing where y'all can actually see the screen. So if you type in NNT, Nancy, trouble, on Google, that stands for number needed to treat. Now, most people have never seen this website, right? But if you type that in, it's going to take you to a website, or it's going to give you the option to actually click on a website called NNT, the number needed to treat. So what the number needed to treat is essentially about is it's one of those questions that we always ask in medicine when it comes to a lot of studies and research and therapy. It's really big in therapy. If I have 10 people and they all have high blood pressure, and I give them this pill, and I'm giving them the pill so that their blood pressure won't evolve into a stroke, how many people do I have to give this pill to over a 5-year period before I actually save one? How many people? Well, if I can't save anybody in that first group of 10, then we now need more. So in the group of 20, how many do I need to treat? Well, 20 may not be enough. And so I may have to go all up to 100. I may have to go all up to 200. I may have to go all up to 300 before I get my first person that I actually save. And that will be your number to treat. Your number to treat will be 100 out of 300, whatever the number is. And then if you put it in percentage, it looks horrible when you put it in percentage. It looks better when you just leave it as the actual number. But if you put it in percentage, it looks horrible. Now, on the other side of the NNT, you have the NNH. NNH stands for number needed to harm. Out of those 300 people, what ratio of people actually had negative side effects from this medication? And so if you give the medication to 6 people, and out of those 6 people, one of them have to stop taking the medication because the side effects are so harsh, because they may have, they're experiencing falls, they're experiencing erectile dysfunction, they're experiencing headaches, they're experiencing lack of memory, they're having muscle aches, or it's actually causing the actual problem, such as a stroke. Now, that would be the number to harm. And so there needs to be not even a balance. The number to treat needs to be smaller than the actual number to harm, because you want to actually make sure that the benefits outweigh the actual cons. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the punching bag of the medical world, which is high cholesterol. High cholesterol. What happens when people talk about high cholesterol? Let's talk about the actual medications, which are statins, right? So when people take statins for high cholesterol, oh, let me get my, so when you go to the NNT, you click on reviews, and you're going to click on the one that says therapy, NNT therapy. All right. Once you do that, you're going to see a section that says cardiology. Like, and this is cloth talk right here. This is cloth talk. Like I said, this conversation is for adults, and this conversation is also for adults that want to actually improve their health. I'm not here to try to, go back and forth with anybody who just doesn't believe anything, who believes that their ice is colder, even though it's Fisher-Price plastic ice. I can't go back and forth with you. But everybody else who actually wants to do for themselves and actually improve their health without the hustle, then this is for you right here. And so when we look at statin medication for preventing an acute coronary syndrome, so how many people do you have to treat with a statin medication to save them from a heart attack, a stroke, or heart failure? How many people? And this probably wasn't a good one to start off with. How many people? How many people, y'all? Let me know real quick. Come on, let's make this thing interactive. How many people do we need to treat to make statin medication actually save a life? Well, this website right here, which is very official, everybody can go and read it themselves. But this is what it says as far as the actual benefit. It says none were helped. None were helped. There was no number. No number. And matter of fact, you can see the colors at the top of the actual recommendations. They go on colors. There's green, there's yellow, and then there's red, and then there's black. And so green means, all right, there's more pros than cons to taking this medication. If it's yellow, this means that man, this is pretty much even. The same amount of people that's going to benefit is going to be the same amount of people that actually get hurt. You know, the cons kind of outweigh the pros. And then with the red, there's no benefits whatsoever. There's no benefits whatsoever, and the actual cons outweigh the pros. And then the black is like the worst. It means like don't even take it, stop doing it. And we're actually going to cover one of those right now, right? And so when we're talking about statin medications to prevent actual acute coronary syndrome, heart attacks, strokes, heart failure, there was no number. They didn't show any actual numbers as far as actually preventing it. But as far as how many were actually harmed by the medication, the side effects, the adverse reactions, the number is unknown. And that's strange because usually you'll have a number on it. Like this is the only one that you see where both, like there's none on this side, and then the number of people harmed is unknown because there was so much. Now let's keep going. So same thing, statin medications. Let's look at as far as statin drugs given for 5 years for heart disease prevention. How many people will have to be treated to actually save a life? Statin medications given for 5 years. How many people you have to treat to actually save a life? They say none were helped. They gave this medication for 5 years. No lives were actually saved with the taking of the actual medication. Well, okay, that's bad, but how many people do we have to treat to actually prevent a heart attack? 1 out of 104 were helped. So the NNT, the number needed to treat to prevent a heart attack with taking statins, was 1 out of 104. This means that you have to give 104 people medication for 5 years to actually stop one person from having a heart attack. What about preventing a stroke? The number was 1 in 154. This means that for 5 years, you have to give 154 people statin medications to prevent one stroke. Now, let's look at the actual number needed to harm. So the number needed to harm, if you were to give these people statin medications for 5 years, 1 in 50 will actually develop diabetes. Now, so when I put this in actual percentage, this is going to sound a little worse. And as far as muscle damage, 1 in 10 had muscle damage. Let's see the percentage. Let's click on that. So when we look at, let's go back over to the actual benefits. So essentially, when you click on the percentage, it's going to show you and it looks ugly. Now, as far as people who saw no benefits whatsoever, we're looking at 98% people saw no benefit whatsoever from taking statin medication for 5 years. And this is why I sound crazy to my medical colleagues, because they are only taking in the actual protocols and the actual guidelines. They're only taking in what they're being fed. Now, when we look over to the actual harms, the percentage of people who were actually harmed, we're talking about 2% people who were taking these medications over a 5 year period actually developed diabetes. And 10% of them over a 5 year period were actually caused muscle damage by taking the actual medication. All right, so let's keep going. I'm not even going to talk about these things. All right, so here's a green one. All right, so this is going to be blood pressure medication for 5 years to prevent death, heart attacks, and strokes. All right, this one is green. And so I got 2 of them for y'all now. Hold on. I'm trying to be unbiased. So what is the number needed to treat to actually see benefits when we're talking about blood pressure medications? Now, here's the kicker with this one. We're not talking about mild hypertension. We're talking about severe hypertension. The people in this study had a systolic blood pressure higher than 170. So nobody in this class had blood pressures lower than 170. So how many people do you have to treat in this group to actually prevent a death? Well, to save one life, you would need to treat 125 people. How many people do you have to treat to actually prevent one stroke? Well, to prevent one stroke, you need to treat 67. And to prevent one heart attack, you need to treat 100. How many people do you have to treat in order to harm them, or for you to actually see harm, side effects, or actually have to stop the medications? To see one that needs to be stopped, or that's going to have a side effect or cause harm. You treat 10, and one of those people, they won't tolerate the medication as well. So when we look at that from the percentage side, as far as how many people saw no benefits, we're talking about 97 people saw no benefits. How many people were actually harmed? We're talking about 10%. Now let's go to this next one. The next one is called Anti-Hypertensive Treatment for Primary Prevention of Cardiovascular Events in Mild Hypertension. Now, these things were, when we're talking about mild hypertension, as pertains to this study right here, they're considering mild hypertension a top number, a stop number of 159 and below, and a diastolic number of 99 and below. And so essentially, if you're 159 over 99, they're talking to you. What we want to know is how many people do we need to treat to actually prevent death, stroke, heart disease, or any kind of cardiovascular event? How many people do we need to treat with high blood pressure medications before we prevent death, stroke, heart disease, cardiovascular events? How many people? None. They said none were helped whatsoever. 0% actually been, well, when you click on the percentage, it just looks sick. It says 100% saw no benefit. And as far as how many were actually harmed, 9% were harmed by the medications and the side effects and had to stop actually taking the medications. And then my last two. So once again, the diabetes talk is always taboo. They don't like for you to call it reversible and all those things. And so what we're going to do right now is look at the one that says, same site, tight glycemic control for type 2 diabetes over 5 years. So this one is interesting, right? Both of these two are interesting. They want to know if we control those blood sugars with these medications tightly, right? Not too high, not too low. I told y'all about that management thing. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with disease management. So they want to know for 5 years if we control these blood sugars tightly with these medications. The key word is with the medications. How many people actually benefit from it? Because surely, if they're injecting insulin and taking all these medications and having all these side effects, surely they're going to benefit from it, right? Surely they will. Well, tight glycemic control for type 2 diabetes over 5 years. I'm just going straight to the percentage. So you click on the percent. How many people with tight glycemic control with medication actually prevented their death? 0%. How many actually prevented? How many people actually had their stroke prevented? 0. Heart attacks? 0. Kidney failure? 0. Amputation? 0. Now, this is not me saying it. You don't want to hear me say it in my own words. So I suggest get the politically correct one, right? So once again, I'm on the nnt.com. This is an open website, and this is only light work. I'm not going to go into my actual subscription base where I'm actually paying the $100 a year to actually have access to the information. So you can go to this website. You can actually look around. But like I said, this information is for grown folks, people who are actually going to do something about it. People who are actually going to do something about it, who are going to take action, because you're not a victim. And we're gonna wrap this all up, right? And so, as far as how many people were actually harmed, we're looking at 17.5% of people were harmed from severe hypoglycemia that actually required hospitalization. So your blood sugar being controlled with medications as tight as you want, it's not me saying it. This study right here is saying that it doesn't really mean much. If you're using medications, using foods is completely different. Using foods are completely different. If you're improving your blood pressure, your cholesterol, and your blood sugar by eating healthier or fasting, then these numbers are going to flip. Because I'm not going to tell you here and sell you all this doom and gloom and that you're hopeless and all this stuff. What I'm doing is breaking the curse that we have of believing that the ice is colder. The ice isn't colder. There goes the receipts. Y'all check it out. And also, please share this video. If you like the information, if you're getting any benefit from it, if you feel like you need to pass this around to people who need that spell broken, because we're only taking these medications and doing these things because we actually feel like it works. And I'm gonna let y'all make the decision. I'm giving y'all the actual websites. You can go there and you make a decision for yourself. That's the way it should be, because you are your primary care provider. All right, so let's keep going. Where am I at? So we just covered the three, right? So is it preventable? The answer is yes. These things are preventable. Is it reversible? The answer is yes. These things are reversible. And do medications decrease mortality and morbidity? I just showed you. No. The answer is no. Now, you go there, you read it, and you make your own independent decision. And the reason why, so it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. This started getting pretty bad because at one time medicine had its sense. But once they found out that they can create chemicals that will block receptors and cause dilation or inhibit enzymes, stuff started to get a little fuzzy, and the bag started to get secured. And what they call this is called disease creep. So once again, y'all go look that up. Disease creep or diagnosis creep. Essentially, this is moving the goalposts. This is saying that in 1 year, a blood pressure below 150/90 is considered normal. Fast forward 3 years, a blood pressure over below 140/80 is considered normal. Fast forward next year, 120/80 is the new norm. Fast forward next year, 115/70 is the new norm. Fast forward next year, no blood pressure. You can't have any blood pressure. If you got blood pressure, that's horrible. You're going to die. And the post just keeps moving, and the bag keeps getting secured. So check it out if y'all just think I'm just out here talking reckless. All right, so does the side effects outweigh the benefits? Well, this is going to be a short point because what benefits are we talking about? Because surely if we're talking about benefits as far as actually decreasing mortality and morbidity, then, maybe we can have a discussion. But I don't really know what discussion we're going to have as pertains to the high blood pressure medications, the diabetes medication, definitely the cholesterol medication. Do the actual side effects outweigh the benefits? You're going to have to show me the actual benefits. And I don't mean show me on PubMed, on WebMD. I don't want to see your basic Google search. I don't want to see any of those things. All right, so real quick, somebody's talking in the little WN. Ginger tea is good. Jasmine is good as well, too. And then I definitely appreciate you. You look very active in here. I appreciate you. Something I do want to correct as well, too. So we say high blood pressure comes from salty foods. That's not true. That's not correct, or that's not the whole truth. I have on my blog, I have a blog called The Truth About Salt and High Blood Pressure. And also a good book to actually read about that is going to be, can y'all see that? The Salt Fix. So if we're talking about table salt, table salt itself is not all that great. But if we have to go into discussion about where this so-called salt, the sodium is coming from, it's coming from the actual processed foods. 88% of the sodium that the American takes in is coming from processed foods. And so we have to watch, because this system is great with the auto deflection. Like, they're great at blocking, and they got this stuff tied down. And so it's not the salt per se. It is the discombobulated ratio. Because anywhere in nature where you look around, whenever you see sodium, you go and see potassium. You see sodium, you go and see potassium. There's no food in nature outside of a few shellfish that actually comes with sodium and no potassium. Like, you're not going to find that in nature. It's only in man-made foods, processed foods, where you can find sodium riding by itself. Other than that, nature has made sure to have a proper ratio of sodium and potassium, because they go back like four flats on the Cadillac. You see one, you see the other. However, with man-made foods, it's baby kids. It's a free world over there. At the same time, I recommend that we be careful with the actual segmentation and individualizing certain ingredients as being the devil, such as salt being the devil. I said we gotta watch that. Sugar being the devil, we gotta watch that, because like Malcolm X said, this media will have you thinking that the good guy is bad and that the bad guy is actually good. And they're also great at deflecting. The devil is the actual processed foods, the standard American diet. Don't try to break it up. And don't run away and start blaming certain ingredients. Because those ingredients in nature work just fine for you. Sugar, salt, sodium, they work just fine for you when they're in nature. However, when they're coming from processed foods, that's when they cause problems. So is it the sodium, the salt, the fat, or is it the actual processing of the food? Or is it the actual refining of the food? Is it the actual exploitation of the actual ingredients in the food? And so that's what it is. It's not the individual ingredients by themselves, because as it pertains to nature, we don't see that. So I'm sorry. Let's get back to it. So we already done with that one. The side effects outweigh the benefits. You guys show me the benefits. You guys show me the benefits. Because as I see it right now, when I'm looking at these things, I'm not seeing it. But also on top of that, what type of mean trick is this where you're taking medications such as metformin to balance out your sugar, but the metformin at the same time is decreasing your B12 while also decreasing your folic acid, which is going to leave you vulnerable for neuropathy, while at the same time increasing your homocysteine, which is going to leave you vulnerable for cardiovascular disease. And so while you're managing your blood sugar and it looks great on that side, that medication is actually robbing you of natural resources. That's why I call them colonizers, because they're robbing you of natural resources. They're robbing you of your natural resources, which are leaving you vulnerable for nerve pain, which are leaving you vulnerable for actual heart attacks. Same thing with blood pressure medications, such as the diuretic, the water pill. That's what they call it. So while it's excreting the actual water out your body, the excess water out your body, you're losing the water, but they also say that you're losing the sodium as well too. And so it's like a double whammy. It's a double high five, And so you're losing water and you're losing sodium. But what else are you losing? Well, you're losing potassium and you're losing magnesium. And this is why some doctors might put you on hydrochlorothiazide with potassium. But if the doctor's not savvy enough or they're not paying attention to detail, they're just going to prescribe you the actual hydrochlorothiazide. Well, what happens when you have low potassium and low magnesium? Well, both of these minerals are important in actually normalizing your blood pressure. They're the very minerals that will actually keep your blood pressure normalized. On top of that, magnesium is extremely important as it pertains to insulin resistance. If you have low levels of insulin resistance, you will become insulin resistant. I'm sorry, did I say that right? If you have low levels of magnesium, you will become insulin resistant. All right, so as far as the pros and cons and the benefits and all those things, we really got to talk about where the benefits at and also how these medications work. And then lastly, are there effective alternatives? So if managing your blood sugar is the goal and you just want to manage it just to manage it or keep it within a tight range, what else can we do naturally that would actually do that for us? Well, we know without a shadow of a doubt, that exercise will do that, especially high-intensity interval training. Matter of fact, high-intensity interval training is actually the enemy of type 2 diabetes because it makes type 2 diabetes tap out. What about herbs? Are there any herbs? I don't know, like cinnamon, bitter melon, white mulberry, any of those? Yes, there are plenty of herbs that will actually help you manage it. Now, at the end of the day, the reason why I'm very careful with my recommendations as it pertains to herbs because it's dried food, it's dried plant food. And so essentially, whole food diet is going to help you out point blank, period. And also, it's no point in you taking the herb if you're going to keep eating the actual processed foods, the nutritional colonizer. It's no point. You might as well just go ahead and go all in on eating the actual processed foods. Now, I can understand if you're kind of working your way to that point. That's one thing. But if you have no intention whatsoever on actually changing the diet, you're just going to take these cinnamon pills or take whatever herbs you're taking, I don't see that being effective. All right. So, as always, we got to wrap this up with some recommendations, right? So, recommendations. I told you, go back and watch my very first video. The title of it is called Nutritional Colonization. The Statin American diet is nutritional colonizers. They come in, they have no intentions on actually bringing you any kind of valuable resources, bring you any kind of good peace and harmony. Their job is to actually take over, rob you of natural resources until there's nothing less. And so when it comes to processed foods, forget about it. As long as you're eating it, you're already at risk. Matter of fact, they talk about high blood pressure and diabetes being risk factors and number one risk factors for these things. No, Statin American diet is number one risk factor for all of these things, like all of them. Next, eat whole foods. So I have no interest in getting into this debate or this conversation about should it be vegan, non-vegan, paleo, keto, whatever else they got out there, all these other things they got out there, because we have a habit of stopping ourselves by procrastinating, by mental masturbating. I have no desire whatsoever to get into that conversation until we actually deal with the basics. You start getting into that conversation, you will indulge yourself into a tribal war. Just like in that last scene of Black Panther, where you got the colonizers like flying off from the actual jets, and what they doing? They fighting each other. No, let's first get out of this issue we have, this huge issue we have, and then once we get over to the other side, we can now break up into our little sections and everything like that. But trying to debate back and forth and spend all this time debating back and forth, there's one thing that we all want to agree on, and that is we know we need to eat whole foods. For the most part, whatever set they with, whether it be vegan, non-vegan, vegetarian, keto, paleo, whatever else is out there, one thing that we will agree on is that whole foods is where it's at. That's one thing at least. The next thing that we will agree on is that we need more plants. We need way more plants. I haven't found anybody from any one of those sets that will disagree with me. We need way more plants, especially the leafy greens. And so at H-BAMN, our recommendation is eat at least 70 to 80% of your food from plants, and the other percentage, it gotta be clean. No antibiotics, no hormones, none of that stuff. Because once again, you're setting yourself up. Same thing with the food, but we're gonna start talking about the GMOs and the pesticides and all those things like that. Well, those are very similar to the antibiotics because you're going to eat them all. So, of course, you want to make sure that both sources, whether it's plant or animal, make sure it's clean. But at the end of the day, if the money is a little funny, you can't make those things happen, eat whole foods. And don't get in your way. Don't try to find an actual excuse about, why it's difficult for you. Next, we got to move. We're built to move. We're designed to move. Sitting is actually stressful for the body. Next, after that, my gospel was fasting. Fasting is my gospel. We have to get back into actually fasting. Fasting was always one of our traditional African principles. Like I said, I'm not creating anything new. All I'm doing is regurgitating the advice of our ancestors. And so I recommend we all have a healthy regimen of fasting in our lifestyle because none of these conditions will actually ever exist in the face of fasting, but it has to be done appropriately. And if you want any information on any of these things I'm saying, especially fasting, because that's my gospel, head over to my social media platforms, whether it be Instagram or Facebook, and find me at Health-BAMN, Health, BAMN. We actually have a challenge that's coming up again at the end of this month. You can be sure to go over to my social media and you can sign up for the challenge. People are getting great results. Next, we got to drink more water. We don't drink enough of that at all. And this whole juice and soda and it's all 100%, natural. Nah, they lying to you again. They're lying to you again. And so after that, sunlight. The reason why we don't understand the importance of vitamin D is because we believe that it's a vitamin because it's called vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. It's called hormone D, and it's particularly important if you have the ability to tan. If you're dark skin like me, or brown skin, or you have the ability to tan, vitamin D is extremely important for you. And when you are deficient in vitamin D, it doesn't affect you the same way that it will affect people who are Caucasian descent. If they are low in vitamin D, it's like them having a cold. If you are low in vitamin D, it's like you having a severe case of pneumonia plus a heart attack at the same time and a wounded leg. It's a mess because we're talking about psychological issues. We're talking about metabolic issues. And so being low in vitamin D leaves your body extremely vulnerable. And that's pretty much it. Also, another recommendation is community. Find people to love upon, your family, love upon your people. And when we look at our ancestors during the time of enslavement, you got to understand that the black grandmother was the oldest living person around that time. We're talking about getting up into the ages of 105, not like once or twice, like consistently. And that was because of the actual community. I mean, of course, how much happiness can you have during that time? But happiness within your actual squad, the actual closeness, because you're talking about everybody being in one house. And that, a lot of times, that community, that love, that compassion, all those things are passed on, and that actually increases lifespan in the face of adversity. Your squad, your family, your team will actually increase your lifespan, even in the face of the worst adversity humanity has ever seen. All right, so that's it, y'all. I appreciate y'all.